If you took all of the things on your baby registry list and added them up, how much money would it amount to? Do you have a baby registry filled with items that people in your life have told you you need? Once all of this stuff comes into your house, is your house just going to be filled with baby items for a human being that really mostly just needs to be close to their parents, to feed, to have a safe place to sleep, and to have diapers changed regularly? So if you have been obsessing over your baby registry, getting everything ready for your sprinkle or your baby shower, or just for that time when your baby comes, I have a real treat. I've invited friend, colleague, former client, founder of Empowered Birth Coaching and Registry Rehab on for the next 12 days. Her name is Lisa. She's amazing. She has lots of evidence-based information, and we're going to put our two brains together for 12 days in a row until December 24th to give you amazing information about how to best prepare for your baby and the items that you are combing through for that baby registry. And we hope to help you to recognize that what you need on your baby registry is support. What you need is to set yourself up to reach out to the people who are going to be most helpful to you once you have that baby in your arms. So welcome to the Milk Making Minutes 12 Days of Postpartum Christmas. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh, IBCLC and Childbirth Educator, on a mission to uncover the barriers that make breastfeeding so difficult. Okay, so we've talked about breast pumps and we've talked about bottles. I want to actually talk about all the accessories we get to help with bottle feeding. So this could be bottle warmers, it could be sanitizers, it could be bottle drying racks, it could be special bottle feeding sponges. So I would love to hear your take on the things that people should be thinking about getting prenatally, maybe some of the things that, yeah, you're probably going to need them, but kind of wait until the postpartum period to see how many you need and how often you're going to use things. And then the things that come along with bottle feeding and pumping that you might not necessarily need.
Sure. I love this topic because I think that we overdo it a little bit when it comes to the accessories. So, for
Mm,
example, um, drying racks. There's lots of different drying racks out there. Some have a bigger footprint than others. I don't think we always think about footprint. I don't know about you, but I don't need like 15 huge items on my countertop
mm-hmm.
cluttering the area, when in reality, you could always lay a towel down and allow the bottles to air dry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just, again, instead of Googling the top 10 accessories that I'm going to need for bottle feeding and putting every single one of those on your registry to feel prepared, I think it's asking yourself the question of what is important to me? What do I need ahead of time? Where should my friends and families be putting their dollars? Or what would I be better off, like you said, purchasing after I get the hang of this? I think that those are things to just take a minute and consider.
Mm.
I bought so many different accessories down to like special bottle soap, which,
Mm.
let me tell you, I mean, I use free and clear soap anyway, and that would have done the trick. So,
Mm-hmm.
cluttering your registry with a million little accessories, those dollars add up. And I would hate for you to have a whole return pile that you're not going to get around to in the postpartum period because it's not a priority.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I think taking that minimalist approach sometimes is not a bad idea.
Yeah. That's great advice. What are the things that you really feel like, yes, people do need this if they are going to be doing any amount of bottle feeding or pumping?
I like a bottle brush because it is hard to get in the nooks and crannies. But if you're not into that, you could always buy glass bottles and then throw them in the dishwasher as well.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
I like a bottle brush. I think that's one of those fancy little like specific things that are cheap but are useful.
I
I
can tell you I still buy bottle brushes because they get really gross,
Yeah,
but my kids are almost 10 and 6, and I still buy bottle brushes now because I use them for our water bottles.
totally. So I
Mhm.
think a bottle brush is one of those inexpensive, handy dandy, helpful things.
Mhm.
Aside from that, I don't have a lot of other, like, for sure you need this. I don't think you need, and I think we eventually will probably chat about some of these individually, but, like, I don't think you need a big bulky bottle dryer. I
Mm.
think those are
Mhm.
adding things to your to-do list personally. If you have a bottle
Mhm.
dryer, they're expensive, they're clunky, they need to be taken apart and washed and sanitized. They grow bacteria, and the truth is you could buy a bottle drying rack if you wanted something snazzy that's heck of a lot, cheaper, or simply let the bottles air dry.
Mhm. Now what's the difference between a bottle drying rack and what was the first
So
thing you
they
mentioned?
so like Baby Brezza is notorious for manufacturing these like big expensive hundreds and hundreds of dollars contraptions like a bottle dryer. And
Oh,
yeah, and
okay.
bottle dryers are advertised to also be great for pump parts. So this is a perfect, fits into your question perfectly. We do not need to spend $300 on,
Mm-mm.
and I'm talking, these things look like a KitchenAid mixer in size. They're
Mm.
massive footprint. And they're kind of like one of those things where it's like now you just created a bunch of extra work for yourself because you need to keep up with keeping that thing sanitized and clean. And what's the point of it?
Mhm.
So
Right.
a bottle rack is something that
Mhm.
could either, be more horizontal, like the fake grass that I'm sure everybody
Mhm.
uses, or if, again, you're like me and you want to keep your countertops fairly, clean of clutter,
Minimalist, yeah,
yeah,
mhm.
there are some bottle racks that go up against the wall that are more vertical that take up a lot less space. So if you want a specific place, a little bit snazzier than just a kitchen towel on your counter, then a bottle rack, for 20 bucks, $10 is what I say, because why would we invest in a drying machine?
Right, yes. That I'm so glad you clarified that because when you were saying bottle dryer, I was picturing the bottle rack.
Rack, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, the
okay.
dryer is like one of those Baby Brezza, like massive. I see these when I do audits, I see these on like 85% of my client
Whoa.
registries. And for me, I will say if that's something you really want, I support all of those decisions. But if you
Mhm.
think that's going to make life easier, it's actually giving you a little extra work and it's expensive.
Yeah, I follow several, like, mom minimalists, and the thing that always sticks in my mind and I'm not very good at this, I'm an aspiring minimalist,
Me too.
but I but I'm not really one, but one of the things I always try to tell myself when I'm thinking about making a purchase for my children because you suddenly wake up in the postpartum period and you look around you and you're like, "This entire house is now dedicated to my baby."
Right.
There's no corner that I look in where there's not children's items, and
Yes.
that's one of the ways that you feel so disconnected from your previous self. And I like to keep in mind when I'm thinking about buying something for my kids is remember that every item in your house that you bring in takes X number of seconds or minutes of maintenance,
Yes.
either daily or weekly. And when you add that up, when you start multiplying it by however many items are brought into your house, no wonder we all feel extremely frazzled as new moms because
Yeah.
our workload has increased significantly on top of course, all the actual baby care.
Yeah, and it's anxiety provoking to, like, look around, and I mean, when it was just my husband and I, everything was pretty organized, and now I remember being in that first month postpartum, and it's like everything is all over, everything is bright colors, nothing has a place anymore. And that's okay. Like there's a beauty in that chaos.
Mhm.
But for somebody that thrives on, having like my space look the way that I want to feel, that could be overwhelming.
Yes.
Yeah. I will also mention a bottle sterilizer. So,
I was gonna ask about this.
bottle sterilizer to me is in the same exact camp as the bottle dryer. And I've seen a lot of companies do a dual sterilizer dryer. So whether it's the sterilizer, the dryer, or a dual contraption, again, I feel that's a little bit extra in terms
Mhm.
of extra work, extra
Mhm.
dollars, extra work, grows
Right.
bacteria, unnecessary. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for ways to cut down on cost, free up the dollars for the real support and services, and create less work for yourself, I say get all of those off the registry.
Right. Yeah, that's a really great reminder because often people spend a lot of time sterilizing
Mm.
both pump parts and bottles, and it's really not necessary. The recommendation is to sterilize once when you get it. And the only way you need to sterilize is boil some water, throw the bottles or the pump parts in the boiling water for 7 to 10 minutes, take it out, let it dry, and then all you need to do is wash with warm, soapy water after that.
Yep.
Unless the bottle has come into contact with something like really gross
Right.
or, your
Right.
pump parts have fallen all over a dirty bathroom floor or
Yeah.
something. And then you might want to sterilize.
I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up, Lo. I have like a vivid memory of a very good friend of mine. We were postpartum like within days of each other, and so our journeys we've kind of followed each other through, and she was formula feeding and I was breastfeeding, so we would like talk about these different experiences. And I remember her saying every night after a full day of being on and being exhausted, I would be standing over my countertop, sterilizing all the bottles from the entire day. Like, and it was a whole process and it would take her such time. And I remember thinking, that sounds horrible. And
Mhm. And it's
but
not necessary.
it's not necessary. It's not necessary. So I think sterilizing the bottles is, again, you can take it off your list. It will minimize the workload. And I don't love like those microwavable sterilizer bags either. That's again extra accessories. I've heard too many clients get burned using those.
Mm.
I like what you said, just the old fashioned boil the water on the stove and just be careful. But I don't like all these extra contraptions to clean when soap and hot water will do the trick.
Right, yeah, and, the other caveat I will add is if your baby has had some sort of illness or something,
Yeah,
then maybe you'll wanna sterilize your bottles, but again, you can do that, in the stove with a big pot. The other thing is if you just really do wanna sterilize, you do not have to do it daily. Do it
right,
weekly,
right.
you can add that into some sort of weekly routine, but it's not a daily thing. The last accessory I wanna talk about is bottle warmers because
Mhm.
I find this to be such an unnecessary accessory. Um, and again, each one of these things in and of itself is small. So if somebody were asking me, should I get a bottle warmer? I really want one, or I like this bottle warmer, and it's just the bottle warmer, great. But when you start to add up
Right.
everything you're purchasing for a baby, then you have to start thinking what is really necessary. And bottle warmers are just unnecessary. You can warm up the small quantities that babies take in just minutes by putting the bag of frozen milk in a warm container of water. Many babies will drink cold milk, and there's nothing wrong with cold milk for a baby. There's no reason to have to warm it up. Now, some babies are individuals just like grown-ups. So some babies do tend to have temperature preferences. And so if it turns out that you have a baby who really likes a certain temperature and you are unable to get to that temperature and your baby takes bottles frequently, then yes, maybe after your baby is born, you might decide, you know what, a bottle warmer would make my life easier. Then go ahead and buy it. And I love your idea of having a breastfeeding fund or a baby feeding fund that people contribute to that you can then take from that fund because you planned for it.
Yeah.
But buying it in advance, your baby might be totally fine drinking cold milk. The other, or just having it warmed up on the counter for a few
Right.
minutes in a container of a bowl of hot water. The only other caveat I will add is sometimes when people have high lipase and they are pumping, you need to boil the milk like almost right away. And, various people have various amounts of time. Like, so some people need to boil it within 30 minutes. Other people need to boil it within an hour. But the milk needs to be boiled before you freeze it to make sure that that high lipase is not impacting the taste of the milk because lots of babies will refuse high lipase milk. And I have heard of people getting bottle warmers that boil to a certain temperature, so that if you are at work or something and you need to boil the milk before you freeze it or before you store it, then it takes care of that high lipase. But again, you're not going to know that until after you've had the baby, after you've started pumping, after your baby has started taking milk. And that's another reason not to freeze tons and tons of milk in the beginning either, because if you have a situation like that, well, there's nothing you can do about it. Or if your baby has an intolerance of some sort or an allergy of some sort and you've frozen, months worth of milk before you discover that, then there's nothing you can really do with that milk besides maybe a bath or some soap or something.
Yeah, and I would love to take like a minute and just touch on that whole notion of I have to have like weeks and weeks and weeks of milk stored. I like to, when we're building registries, I like to ask specific, insightful questions because not everybody needs a big amount of stored milk. I was somebody that was taking an extended maternity leave that was exclusively breastfeeding, whose baby refused a bottle. And yet I stressed myself out to store away tons and tons of milk. And why?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's there's so much individualism that's at play when it comes to breastfeeding, bottle feeding, feeding in general that we overlook and then it ends up being more overwhelming.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, yeah. And then people think they have low supply
Right.
because they're not able to feed their baby on top of an excessive amount of stored milk.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking to me all about the extra accessories that go along with bottles. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we've gone through breast pumps, we've gone through bottles, we've gone through bottle accessories here on the third day of the Milk Making Minutes 12 Days of Postpartum Christmas. And I hope that what you are taking away from each episode is that, yes, your baby does need some things for you to feel really good in caring for your baby. And what your baby needs most is for you to feel supported. One of the best ways for you to feel supported is to right now during pregnancy focus on setting yourself up to feel really good in the postpartum period. And I have a way for you to do that. Go to my website, www.quabbandbirthservices.com, click on courses, sign up for my childbirth education course for a great postpartum. Here we will meet for 4 weeks in a row starting in February, and you will get to be with your partner, imagining what life in the postpartum period is like and learning about how the decisions you make during pregnancy and childbirth can impact how you feel once the baby comes. Sign up now. The course is 50% off for the first 10 couples. I cannot wait to see you in the course.